everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the recreation assignment for Don't Pass Me by Eric Gansworth. So you're going to need to have a few things up on your screen. You're going to want to have this document open, and you're going to want to have the video open. And the actual text, this text is in Schoology, but I'll have the text on the screen, okay? So we're going to start reading and go through the recreation together a bit. So we'll be noting the characters, we'll be noting what the setting is and the central problem in the story. And then when something pops out to us as probably being a very central idea of the story, we're going to write it over here. Okay, so key details over here, and then really important key details over here. Okay, so this is Don't Pass Me by Eric Gansworth. On the first day of 7th, Haley Sampson leaned against my homeroom's radiators. Her eyes said, "Don't blow my cover, doobie, if you know what's good for you." The res school only took us to the end of 5th, and then we were merged into a massive junior high just beyond our border. There, among the 900 white kids and a handful of black kids, we each made decisions about how Indian we appeared, and we respected each other's choices. Haley snapped her eyes at the beadwork keychain on my backpack. Did she recognize it as one made by her aunt? Margaret Sampson, June 1975, was written on the soft tanned leather backing. Even now, a year after Margaret had made it, the keychain held up. It was the gift I'd received at the moving up dinner held at our elementary school, adult beadwork class members, mostly city Indian grandma types. So I'm going to pause here because we have a character. Haley Sampson is the first character we meet. She is a classmate at school of the main characters, and she is Native American. Okay, and we also have the setting. We know that it's basically like the first day of school at a new school. Okay. And there's also something else I want to point out. It says, there, among 900 white kids and a handful of black kids, we each made decisions about how Indian we appeared, and we respected each other's choices. So this is talking about students going to a new school and basically deciding who they are. In this case, the characters are Native American, so they're deciding, how Indian am I going to be? How Native American am I going to be? That's a really important idea, and it points to the central idea of the story. So I'm going to put that over here. That's like talking about the student's racial identity. Okay, we'll actually get into that when we talk about the theme. Capitalize Native. Okay. Moving on. So he's talking about the keychain. Okay, adult beadwork class members, mostly city Indian grandma types, and younger res ladies, made them for all levels of Indian graduates, elementary, high school, and college. The class members were relearning beadwork skills they'd lost or learning stuff their mothers had refused to teach them. I didn't have any keys yet, so I just looped mine on my back zipper's tongue. My keychain was a buckhead, and my last name was Buckman, so that was a cool matchup. The kids I should have left elementary school with, like Haley, got a turtle keychain at moving up. I loved mine, but the buckhead reminded me that I had failed kindergarten. When you screw up taking a nap and playing with finger paint, no one forgets. And if you did happen to forget, Carson Mastic had given me a helpful nickname, Hubie Doobie, the flunked out booby. We each adapted to our new lives differently. Haley and Carson wrapped themselves in white kid hairstyles and clothes, but you knew they were Indian as soon as you saw them with us. Bill and Andy Cruz, two cousins who I met in my kindergarten do-overs, were dark like me. We had fewer options if we wanted to disguise ourselves. Older and bigger than every kid in my class, I stuck out. Even before my beaded keychain, I refused to try passing for a kid from the Italian suburbs or passing for a tanned farm boy. Strangers would know exactly where I was from. I have a big hockey Indian nose, thick lips, and long black hair tied back in a sneway. I don't know if I say that right. Now past its second summer. So past its second summer, that means he's had it for 2 years. When I didn't braid it, you could see it was uneven and split. Haley Sampson's dad was white, so people said she had half Indian blood. Okay, so there's more people that we've met here. Main character, the narrator, is, they call him Huey here, but his name is Hubert Buckman. He is Native American. And it's interesting here. They're telling us who is passing for white. Okay. They talk a lot about how dark their skin is as Native Americans. Okay, so they've told us that Haley is half white. Not passing, I mean, he's a failed year in school. And he says that he looks like a Native American. Okay. And then we also met other characters. Okay, so it's interesting that of all the characters, we're on the second page of this story, and he's told us what everybody's skin looks like. We know which of these students are passing as Native American. I'm sorry, which of these students are passing as white and which of these students are not passing as white because they just look too Native American. Okay. And that seems to come up with like a central idea. So the central idea seems to be like how Native, oops, right? That seems to be a thing. Like how Native American is each student? They are talking about their identity. Okay. Moving on. Haley Simpson's dad was white, so people said she had half Indian blood, which I thought was bizarre. Did she bleed different colors depending on where she was cut? This half-blood allowed her to almost cover up any visible trace of us. She was better at her disguise than Carson, and he moved easily between the two groups, like he wore skin camouflage. The only thing giving Haley away were her Indian eyes. I don't mean they had a melodramatic tear hanging out of them like a pool chain. They were just deep, deep brown, the color of a horse. Last spring, after her mom died, Haley had racked up enough days absent to win herself a repeat year, so we became classmates again. I thought I'd show her the ropes about being an official failure, but that first morning in homeroom, Haley sported a new, wild look beyond the usual human colors. Her face shimmered like a powdery pearl, slashed with maroon lips and lavender eyelids. Heavy black liquid gave her crow's wings for eyelashes. Her purple black hair was sprayed into an explosion on top of her head. It was like the white side of her had wrestled the Indian side down for the count, but they both came out a little rougher. Since she was now with kids a year younger than her, and we were the only Indians in our section, she knew no one but me. I was used to flying solo since my place as the big Indian kid made white kids nervous. By the middle of the day, she'd begun to sit next to me. We just sat together, silently, pretending that we didn't live a road apart. I knew when it was safe to talk. Those passing Indians, as soon as they got to the buses, suddenly they were indie again, like abracadabra. But if you tried to chat them up in school, prepare to be ignored. At the end of the day, I silently went to my locker and she went to hers. So you look kind of different these days, I said as we neared the safety bubble of the res buses. What's going on up here? I motioned around her head. Soon as I can, I'm signing up for bosses, she said as if she hadn't ignored me all day. Gonna get my cosmetology license. Then, fast as we're out, I'll have the perfect job training. I can't sign up until 9th, so right now I'm practicing on myself and my old Barbie glamour head. I nodded. My girl cousins had those heads too, perched on their bedroom dressers, slathered in makeup and sporting a ratted spiked blonde halo. The disembodied Barbie heads freaked me out. The Barbies reminded me of the flying head in the stories our Gramps told. He claimed those heads cruised around the res to catch kids awake past bedtime. After a while, I'd refuse to go into my cousin's room. Sometimes one of those girls would chase me with the Barbie heads making haunted noises if she felt especially evil and ambitious. You could use a sprucing up, Haley added. I could even cut those out. She touched the scroungy tips of my snayway. Imagine because he's Native American, he wears his hair very long. So imagine a very long braid that's kind of like wrapped. That would be how the main character has his hair, like a very long braid that is wrapped. Clucking at my split ends. In the 2 years I'd been growing my long hair, it had never been touched by a girl. A dumb guy might think this would change how we talked to each other, but I knew better. The next morning, as soon as we left the bus again, she got res amnesia again. I took what I could get. Okay, so we definitely have an idea of what the major problem in this story is. The major problem is the student's identity. So I'm going to make that bold just so it's easier to see. So that's the big question, is how Native American are they? And if their cultural identity has a positive impact on them or a negative impact on them, right? For Haley, it seems to be pretty negative. She doesn't like anything about the fact that she's Native American. However, the main character, Hubert, he seems to feel just fine that he's Native American. Okay, moving on. I hate this class, Haley whispered, not looking at me as we walked into health, the third week in. You ain't alone, I whispered back, staring at the weird scene on the floor. Everyone hated health, where they forced you to talk in class about the things you were discovering on your own in private. The first week, we blew through the safe units on nutrition and hygiene, like flossing, the dangers of smoking, and gum disease. The stress and body unit took up the second week. The textbook pictures weren't real stomach ulcers under stress, but instead drawings of pale pink organs, bunched like the paired socks your mom brought home from the laundry. Folks, I'd like you to meet Recessa Annie, Mr. Corker said, hovering above this mysterious figure collapsed near his desk. He grinned, loving the small chaos he'd thrown us into. eyeing Haley for any bad reaction. We were supposed to go to our seats, introduce ourselves. Were we supposed to gather around Annie like he was trying to herd us? We knew the splayed woman wasn't real. Her vinyl skin and scraggly straw-colored doll hair made her look like a special rough life anti-glamour edition of the giant Barbie head Haley had mentioned. This Annie had at least a body, but she seemed boneless or something. Her sneakered feet lay at weird angles flat against the classroom floor. She's not breathing, Mr. Corker said, trying to sell us on the idea she was alive. The room filled with silence as we stared at the lifeless jogger. Okay, he said with a loud, awkward clap. Recessa Annie is a simulator to help us learn to properly administer CPR. He paused and then elongated the next 3 words. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Now she is not a toy, he added as if we'd suddenly tried to play with her. She's a lifesaver. That doesn't mean you can suck on her, Huey, said Marco, one of the jerks in my class, his friends laughing. I wondered if Carson Mastick had told white kids that I'd failed kindergarten, or if they just overheard him calling me Huey Dewey, the flunked out booby. Hey guys, Mr. Corker jumped in. These are exactly the shenanigans I warned about. Health is no joke. The laughters cupped hands around their grins like TV chimps. I wondered if Mr. Corker himself had a stomach under stress. This class used to do CPR towards the end of the year, but for us, it was going to be week 3. Maybe the ghost of Haley's mom and her heart attack haunted Mr. Corker. He'd been Haley's teacher last year, and here she was again. I didn't ask if she'd failed CPR or if they had just gotten to it on time. He seemed super aware of Haley when we walked in to find Annie, a waxy, blonde, dead, loose-limbed jogger in a heap on our floor. Haley looked down, matching Annie's blank stare. So this makes us think that Haley's mom had a heart attack, and it sounds like Haley found her mom. If you see someone in distress, you may be the only person around who knows what to do. Like Annie, you too could save lives. Think about it. Then he performed the proper method step by step. We had to ask Annie if she was all right, touch her neck to find a pulse. We were then supposed to lean over, place an ear to her mouth, and pretend she might answer and breathe when we knew she wasn't going to cooperate. Mr. Corker tilted Annie's head back, pinched her nose, took a deep breath, and then locked lips with her, repeating this sequence a few times. Looks like she's going to hurl, said Tom, one of Marco's grinning chimps, when her body heaved, filled with Mr. Corker's forced breath. So there's a couple characters here that are worth mentioning. There's a couple characters who they're basically class clowns, and they make fun of Hubert. In just a second, you're going to see they make fun of his skin color. That what happens when you try to kiss a girl, Doobie? Marco said to me, not bothering to color his grin. Now that some guys had gotten growth spurts, they tested their manhood by poking the big Indian kid. They acted like they were running with the bulls, like we'd seen men do in our social studies unit on Spain, except in this case, I was the bull. Marco, Mr. Corker shouted, running an alcohol wipe along Annie's lips and onto her slightly exposed teeth. Here, on the mouth. Tom, chest compressions. I don't know what that is. You're going to learn firsthand right now, Mr. Corker said, since you can't seem to pay attention otherwise. What if I don't want to? Detention and an F for this unit. Your choice. Tom and Marco grumbled, bumbling to the floor. Mr. Corker talked them through CPR basics, checking and clearing Annie's airways, sealing her lips and pinching her nostrils closed, then breathing into her mouth. You need to find, he said, pausing, getting ready to speak a word he couldn't avoid, her breastbone, to commence with proper chest compressions. Regularly check her neck artery for a pulse. Mr. Corker squeezed a bulb that sent air down a tube into Annie, giving her some artery action. He waited until Tom broke a sweat, pushing up and down on Annie's chest, elbows locked, before he squeezed Annie's pulse bulb. Mr. Corker then alcohol wiped her mouth and had Marco and Tom change places, working them hard again. All right, who's next? Mr. Corker said as the jerks stood. Jackie, Marco said, standing, how about you let me find your breastbone to practice proper chest compression? Get your pulse going. Jackie fake slapped his chest, laughed, and stepped forward, volunteering. I'll do it, she said, kneeling easily, leaning her face into Annie's, taking her duties seriously. She looked amazing without even trying. She could be flirty, kind, sensitive, take her grades seriously, and be dressed perfectly, all at the same time. Other girls, Haley included, could juggle maybe two of those things, but even there it was touch and go. Jackie floated on a cloud of her own natural amazingness. I'll do compressions, I said, kneeling next to her, still feeling like a Spanish bull this close. If I made one wrong gesture, I might send tiny Jackie flying across the room. Mr. Corker ignored the whispering chimps around us. Forget them, Jackie said, touching my arm, her skin slightly warmer than mine. We've got a life to save. I tried taking her advice, but even compressing, I heard Tom say that I was just trying to get Jackie's white girl spit in my mouth the only way it could happen. I compressed so hard I felt I might bust the spring in Recessa Annie's chest. Marco said I wanted to see how wide Annie's mouth opened. They speculated that my locked elbows were clogged with embedded dirt, but my skin was just naturally darker there and a few other places. When I was 7, I tried to scrub the color off my elbows so hard they blistered and bled. As I compressed Annie's chest in silence, one fist over the others, my ears burned deeper red. Oh, I forgot, Mr. Corker said when we stopped. Recessa Annie's lips wore the same frosted red that Jackie had. He dug into his desk for Kleenex and a jar of Noxzema. Girls, and some of you guys, maybe, I don't know, please wipe away any makeup off before your turn. We don't want it staining Annie's skin. You want her to be normal colored for people who come after you. Normal. Haley and eyes locked eyes. This is a key scene because it shows a connection between Haley and Hubert. Because when the teacher calls Annie's skin color normal, not realizing that he shouldn't have said that, they lock eyes. So that's a key detail from the story. So when Mr. Corker normal colored, Hubert and Haley are the only ones to notice. So you can tell it's on both of their minds. Okay, and that kind of shows that Haley does think of her identity as a Native American, right? Because she caught this, what Mr. Corker said. Okay. After final bell, safely within the private area near our res buses, Haley came up to me. She had reapplied her maroon lips and outlined their edges to make them seem smaller, like Barbie lips. How come you let those guys talk to you like that? She asked, pretending she hadn't chosen to be deep undercover, like cops show heroes trying to spy on criminals in their hideouts. I was the only Indian there, I said, and it was out before I could slam my big mouth shut. I meant guy. I was the only Indian guy there, but she had already joined girls from her end of the res, safely bubbled in the safety bubble of our portable res on wheels. From that day forward, she wouldn't even silently sit near me. So he kind of called Haley out as not a Native American, and that hurt her feelings. Even though she's trying to pass and trying to figure out her cultural identity, he called her out on it, and now she doesn't talk to him. From that day forward, she wouldn't even silently sit near me. I almost wanted to expose her disguise to the new girls she shared makeup tips with and the guys she flirted with. I had been followed in stores enough to wish that I had more to say in how others saw me. On the bus, no matter where I sat, she had made sure to walk past, not even snapping her deep, horse brown eyes in my direction. She wasn't going to waste energy making a face at me. The week of Thanksgiving, Rasessa Annie long stored back in her suitcase, our classes were briefly segregated. We were supposed to cover a very special unit they might as well have called Line Drawings of Adulthood unit. The girls from my class went with Miss Diamore, and the guys from her class joined us in Mr. Corker's room. If your parents didn't sign the permission slip, you were shipped off to the library to maybe conduct your own solo research on the puberty and reproduction unit. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I want you guys to finish reading the story on your own. And I want you to complete this last box. So there's going to be one more major event in the story that's really going to stand out to you. Okay, something to do with colored pencils. It's really going to stand out. You're going to write that here and also here, because what you're going to see that happens in the story, here's your hint, it happens with colored pencils. Not only is it a key detail of the story, it is also connected to the central idea. So I want one more idea here and one more idea here. Okay? And do not worry about the 3-minute breakdown. Okay? That is due today, so make sure you finish the story today.